So like when we speak about the future, it's really funny. Year after year, I've been on the stage with Jeff, and I have something to confess. Sometimes, maybe even most of the times, when I listen to what's being said on the stage, it seems like science fiction. And I bet to some of you it seems that way too. It feels like this stuff will take years before it becomes practical for you to use, maybe even never. But here's something else I've noticed. As crazy as this stuff seems at the time, I come back a few years later, and many of you are actually doing the things that we were just speculating about. You're doing today what a few years ago seemed totally impossible. So for example, just this year, our customer SpaceX launched history's first reusable rocket. We delivered beer autonomously. And Zaha Hadid, who we unfortunately lost this year, brought us a beautiful building that's being manufactured, not built. And so I want to thank you all for taking these ideas that we've been presenting over the years and making them real. This willingness to embrace new ideas, to change the way you think and do your work, that's what it's going to take to succeed in a future that's all about change. So Jeff talked about the new technologies, and he talked about the new dynamics around talent that are going to affect all of us. There are a lot of other industries that are facing similar challenges that I think we could all just spend a moment and we can learn from these other industries. So let me give you my current favorite example. In the last 12 months, I've met with more auto executives than I probably have in the last 12 years. And so why are they suddenly reaching out for answers? And the reason is because they're anxious, because the world around them is changing. Now, there are three important things that are transforming the auto industry right now: autonomous cars, car sharing, and electric powertrains. Now, some of the car companies are being really proactive about these changes, and some of them, not really. So let's start with this idea about self-driving cars. For 100 years, car companies have been obsessed with creating a great experience for drivers. The feel of the car, the responsiveness, the power, the comfort. Some have even claimed to have mastered the ultimate driving experience. But when cars drive themselves, there's no such thing as the driver experience. They need to build the ultimate passenger experience. So how do you do that? They need to get good at building complex sensing and control systems. Their new cars will need software that responds to the world in milliseconds. They have to get smarter the more they drive so that they don't make the same mistake twice. Essentially, these cars just can't be building, these companies can't just be building cars. They need to be building drivers. But wait, there's more. Not only do we stop driving in our cars, we may actually not own them either. Most of the people I work with who are under 30, they don't own a car. And they don't want to. And it's not because we pay them poorly. It's because they get around with kick scooters and Uber and car sharing. That's what's really scaring the crap out of all the auto execs I've been talking to. For 100 years, car ownership influenced everything the industry did. They designed cars to be sold to drivers. Their strength was in their massive distribution network. Last year alone, Americans spent almost $600 billion at car dealerships. So now, car companies have to figure out how to thrive in a new world where people don't pay to buy cars, but pay to access them instead. Instead of buying one car from a dealership that you'll own for maybe a decade, you'll start thinking about transportation as a service. And it's a service you'll get from a range of providers. For example, if you need to get across town, you can get that car that does 40 miles an hour from Google. If you got a long trip on the highway, maybe the Mercedes that does 180. That's more appropriate. The companies that have embraced this change from ownership to access, these are the companies that are really going to win. Now, it's funny, 5 years ago, I was talking to an auto company, and they were unbelievably dismissive of electric cars. They were making fun of them. They said electric cars were a crazy California idea. It wasn't going to go anywhere. And that company spent a bunch of years totally in denial. And now where are they? They're struggling to catch up. And so even though I am personally a crazy Californian, I understand why they dismissed electric powertrains. If you've spent 100 years learning how to make the best engines and transmissions, that's how you see the world. You know, if you only have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. If you're great at something that's about to become less important, it's almost impossible to see that new thing that's about to become essential. So if you're great at internal combustion engines, how do you make the transition to electric? Well, I would suggest you experiment. Think about those naysaying auto execs. What they should have done is create a small team and send them off to build a car with an electric drivetrain. That way they wouldn't be on the sidelines today. They would have gotten the experience, and they would be right in the game today. And so what lesson can we take from this? I think it's this, that regardless of the scale of your company, you still need to experiment. Now, R&D doesn't need to be this really large research and development facility. It could be just Rachel and Dave. What's important is that you're proactive and not to be afraid of what these seemingly crazy new ideas. So this is just one example of an industry dealing with 3 massive changes all at the same time. And that's what we crazy Californians call disruption. Most of us, when faced with this, we want to ignore it, or we even want to run away from it. But that's actually the thing I think you need to run towards. The thing to understand is that disruption can be the source of new value. It might really be what makes your company great in the future. And that's true across industries. It's true in the software industry. At Autodesk, we're facing disruptions. One of the disruptions that's most prominent you heard about this morning, it's machine learning. Now, Jeff talked about machine learning as a design tool. But what about machine learning to design new software? You know, in the past, we used to write code, and the program would do exactly what you told it to do, forever. The only way to make that program better, other than rewriting it, was just to put it on a faster computer. Now today, this kind of deterministic software programming is being totally replaced by machine learning. So for instance, we can now use algorithms to understand the work you're doing and monitor how you use your software. Then that software can customize itself to become exactly the tool you need. So some of this is already real. It's available now in Design Graph on A360. We can recognize the designs you're working on based on their shape or based on their function and show you all the other things that look like it or relate to it or even work like it. So for example, if you have a bolt in your design, it will show you the nuts and washers appropriate. It can also make really good guesses about what you're going to need next and point to you designs that already exist, so you don't really need to reinvent that proverbial wheel. Here's another way we're using machine learning. This example is not about designing more efficiently. It's about making things more efficiently. So one of the biggest headaches for machinists is figuring out the cutting parameters that they need to run their machines, speeds and feeds. Master machinists spend their entire career trying to hone this kind of dark art. But this summer, some folks at Autodesk figured out how to use machine learning to automate the feeds and speeds. So now that the engineers and machinists don't need to worry about that anymore. The algorithm just figures it out for them. So this is just a glimpse into the future of machining and machine learning. Now, as Autodesk tools go into the cloud, they're going to be able to learn from your digital designs, from how you work and from how you make things. Unlike the tools of the past, which just stayed the same and never got better, these tools will learn from their experiences and from yours. So here's something else that's changing at Autodesk. And this is for Anna. We are not building tools for you anymore. We're building tools for your teams. And that's just a huge shift. For 34 years, we got really good at building tools for individuals. And kind of like that car company that's really good at combustion engines, we have to look past our own expertise to a new generations of tools that make teams really more productive. So think about it. It's like sports. Unless your team is collaborating well, you can't even compete, much less win. So when people communicate changes and they anticipate needs and they respond together to a changing environment, then the outcomes are successful. So here's a video I really like. I think it sums up a lot of what you've heard today. Approaching problems differently, using technology to make new things in new ways, and being proactive in the face of change. Look around for all the disruptions and all the opportunities that are happening in your industry. Look for ways to go beyond your own expertise and get to work on the future. AU is a perfect place to start. Have a great week. Thank you.